Oh, here we go. Oh.
Well, you work to earn a living, but on weekends comes the time.
Still getting over the Richmond game. Oh. What went wrong? What went right?
Like football,
good.
A lot of things around. When you line them up together, the footy wins hands down.
Mike Brady. There we are. Here they are. Lincoln, Rainman, Tyner, how you going? Oh, wrong mic. Sorry about that.
Take two.
Take two.
Test.
Oh,
Good evening.
Why have we gone to the drive show, Amy? Oh. I'm sorry. It's that happened the other night too. We've got this sort of switching computer, and naturally this isn't the evening show, but it just lurched to drive. I'm sorry about that, Lincoln.
It's all right. My natural magnetism's turning off the buttons.
Funny you should say that. How are you, Lincoln?
Very good.
Yes.
Busy week, but travelling well.
Yes, good. Mike Sexton.
How are you, Peter?
Not bad.
Have you recovered from the weekend?
Oh,
How was Touristy Park Saturday?
I didn't watch it. I listened to it on the radio, so I didn't have quite the full horror of the scene. I mean, they were telling me how wet and muddy it was, but they were aquaplaning.
Well, I can't remember seeing Football Park as rain-soaked as that. I mean,
and you were a red coat.
It reminded me of the days, really, of Nord Oval, where they used to have that kind of pond on the grandstand side by the brick wall there on a very muddy day. But I can't remember seeing Football Park that waterlogged. But I must say we've been very critical of a lot of the Crows and what's been happening this year. But last Saturday, for Port Adelaide supporters, that was just pitiful. On a day that was so important, with, celebrating 140 years of the club, having all the past greats, the Motleys, the Garlands, the Greers, Neville Hayes, they were all there. And for the, to run through a banner that said proud of the past, confident of the future, and put up that effort against Richmond, gee, I'll tell you what.
It was a shocker.
And then they backed up by getting done by the Tigers again on Sunday.
Yeah.
Down the bay.
So it was a...
yes, bad.
We are facing the miserable prospect of Adelaide and Port Adelaide maybe not participating in the final. So in the state of South Australia, things are looking a bit crook.
First, when we were down at Alberton, Mike, we heard about that business of they were trying to negotiate the SANFL game as a curtain raiser.
Yes, they were.
Last Saturday.
They tried to get, their idea was to have Glenelg play Port Magpies as the lead-in, but the Bays weren't so keen on that. I think mostly because it was a home game for them and the money spinner when they played the old.
But they were going to the Magpies offered to swap it, but they didn't come to the party.
No. Well, no one really came to the party on that day. It was disappointing all round.
It was a shocker.
A good day for Damien Hardwick, though.
Yes.
Yeah. They show something.
Yes, quite. Now our guest, Rick Neagle. Hello, Rick.
Hi, Peter.
Now we say Neagle, not Nagle.
Thank you. Yes, it's Eagle, not Agle, so thank you for that, Peter.
It is too. Now, welcome to the show, and we'll get your tips later on. Norwood, 1982. What do you remember?
Well, the biggest memory, of course, in '82 was a premiership win, and we had a great side. And I came into the side halfway through the season as a debutant, and I remember my first game was at Sturt at Unley Oval, and the team was just switched on the whole year, and it was very fortunate to come into a team like that. We actually didn't lose one game, from the time I played my first game up to the grand final. So it was quite a surreal.
Gee.
Yeah, it was a surreal experience, to tell you the truth. And I was saying to Michael just off air before, it was certainly a side that I think, and without being arrogant, we just knew we were going to win at the end, because training for the 2 weeks prior to the grand final, a ball did not hit the deck when we were training at full pace. So it was a great experience, and a year that I remember with fondness for the rest of my life.
You must have thought footy was pretty easy.
And I think that might have been a bit of a problem too, Michael, because it was easy, and in terms of that, and our side had great champions in it, and we kind of. It was an experience for my first year. Was quite surreal.
They're remote odds, imagine, in your debutante year.
And to kick 6 goals in the grand final.
Yeah, and to lose no games. Incredible. That would almost be unique, would it?
Did you go in feeling nervous? I mean, to play like you did and kick 6 and win a premiership, virtually in your first half of a season. Did you sort of pinch yourself throughout the game and think, wow, or was it just it all fell into place? They were just that oil machine that year.
I think every game you play, league footy, grand final or even minor round game, there's always the nerves before the game, and I didn't feel any different prior to that game. And I remember Neville Roberts saying to me as we ran out to the ground, this is just the same game. Look at the crowd around us. There's 50,000 people. Just suck it in and then forget about it, which I remember doing. But I also remember during that game too, halfway through the second quarter, when Duncan Fosdyke kicked a goal up to the southern end. I looked at him, and we're only 7 goals up to three to the Bays, but we had total command and momentum of the game, and kind of felt at that time that we really had it. We played that way the whole game, so it was a fantastic experience.
And for Rocky Roberts particularly, he'd come across from West Torrens that year in search of playing finals and being in a premiership, because he'd had a couple of years at Richmond and they weren't in the finals. And I have that memory of him running up and embracing the Thomas Seymour Hill Cup at the end of the game there. So it just showed that all the great things he'd achieved as a goal kicker, state player, played for Victoria, the Premiership Cup was what it was all about, and that exemplified, I think, what it meant.
Yeah, and you couldn't get that cup off him either, by the way.
But you mentioned what a great side. Listen to some of the names in that side with Rick Neagle in the forward pocket, Mick Alani, Keith Thomas, Gary McIntosh, Neil Button, Neville Roberts, Duncan Fosdyke, Phil Gallagher, Andrew Aish, Jimmy Teal, Danny Jenkins, Tom Warhurst, Bruce Winter, Michael Aish, Greg Turnbull, some great names in that side. So
Frankie Stemper too.
Came across from Woodville.
Yeah. In Glenelg's defence, they had come off one of the greatest games, the 82 preliminary final. Did you watch that game?
We were behind the goals at the southern end.
That was an extraordinary game.
It was an extraordinary game, and obviously everyone remembers that game for the right reasons too. That Glenelg had come from 5th and gave it everything they had. It obviously was also the rift with Granger and Corns, of course, and Granger was causing a bit of havoc out there, and it was a 1-point win, I think, to Glenelg in the end.
Yeah. And was it Stephen Barrett that had his leg broken?
Yeah, he did. And we just loved watching them hit each other as much as they could, and we just went out the back of the goals, watched the game, and went off and did what we had to do.
Did you have a little sigh of relief that you didn't have to face Granger?
Yeah, well, we'd faced him the week before, and look, I actually had a bit of a run-in with him during that game, and I can't really tell you exactly what he did to me, but
why?
Well, he did the old squirrel grip, and
might get retrospective suspension.
Punched me in the face, but Jimmy Till was about 20 yards away coming across, and of course broke that fight up a little bit. So Granger was something to. He had that factor on the ground at the time that he did have presence, and he was a great player too. But we all forget that. David Granger was a go-to person at centre half forward for Port Adelaide, and I have a lot of respect for the way he played the game in that way too. So
it's good of you to say that, because he's a much maligned figure, isn't he?
Look, he is, and he's a genuinely good bloke. I've met him before, and he has a fantastic presence off the field too.
Good.
And interesting, in that 1982, we're talking about tough men on the field. I mean, the premiership coach for North that year was Neil Baum, who in his playing days at Richmond was known as a pretty wild man and took no prisoners. So it's interesting if Rick could tell us a bit about the difference in Neil Baum as a coach and a manager of young men.
Barmy was epitome of just one of the greatest coaches that you could ever have, I think, because for me personally, he embraced all the skills of the game. He also had a fantastic discipline within the unit. He didn't actually ever condone fighting or 15-minute penalties in those days. He was totally against that sort of behaviour, be it that he didn't display that in his playing career. I also found that he always was someone that never belittled anyone in front of a group. So he had the ability to make sure that if he was getting a message across, it was in a group situation, then individually take your side and say critical things to you at that point in time, and also a lot of praising. So for me personally, he was a fantastic influence on my football career, and I'm sure a lot of other people would say the same.